welcome to another money morning routine. Okay, Friday today, I closed out my budget for January. So I want to go over that, and then I want to go over for some things in February. So let's look at my monthly budget category breakdown. Now, to get to this spot where you are filling this out, you need to have fully updated, accurately filled out expense trackers. Okay, so I have, you can see I'm totaling up my categories down there by color. All right, so you want to make sure that all of your checking account expense tracker and your cash expense tracker is fully filled out for the month. That's the first step. Then you can come over and start adding up your colors and filling out the monthly budget category breakdown. Now, let's see, the total monthly inflow for me in January was $14,810. But that is not all earned income. That is not all my paycheck. I get a lot, to this day still, I get a lot of comments and messages like, wow, Miko, you made a lot of money. No, not necessarily. Let's break it down. So my starting balance, what I started with in my checking account the moment I started tracking my spending and starting my budget in January is $1,022. My earned income, my paycheck income from the Budget Mom was $7,200. Other income, so this is other income that I earned throughout the month. Let's talk about that very quickly. So other income, you can see I made $700 from selling clothes on Mercari. Another other income that I had is I had an Avista credit for my utilities. We're on comfort level billing. We redid our averages and we were under that average, so we got a credit. I also got the payout from my damaged bag, luggage bag from Alaska for $375. So those I considered other income, okay? So that totaled $1,448. Now savings used, $5,140. Savings used is in an instance whenever I'm using, so I use a vacation sinking fund, okay? I also use, I used a house insurance sinking fund. I used a Costco sinking fund. So this is money that I saved in previous months that I'm now spending in the current month. So that's savings used. All right, so with all of that equals $14,810. All of those different things equal what we call inflow into our lives that month. It's money that came into our lives that we then chose to spend, save, invest, or so on. Let's break it down into the categories. These are my budget categories and the colors that represent them. If you see green here, I was under budget. If you see red, I was over budget. Now, just because it says red over budget doesn't mean I didn't have the money to spend. It's just I didn't have a plan in my budget to spend it. So for food, I was over by $332. Here's something I want to talk about very quickly. You might be asking, well, Miko, if you were over by $332, where did that money come from? So I showed this before. This is where I was tracking my variable expense categories for my variable spending in my budget. The yellow marks are how much I saved in each one of those categories, meaning how much I didn't spend. So for example, I had a household budget of $100. I didn't spend anything. So I saved $100. Okay, fun. I was supposed to have $100. I only spent $90.85 of that. And I had $9.15 left over. This is what, essentially, if these were cash envelopes in my wallet, the yellow is the cash that was left over that I didn't spend. So it got me thinking I could do a couple of different things. I could go to the bank and pull this money out, the ones in yellow, for a total of $194.48, and use that for my savings challenges or my 100 envelope challenge. That's my thought process was. That's what I was going to do with it. Instead, though, I was over in my food budget $147.52 for the amount that would have been taken out of my cash envelopes had I had them. Now, because I have some money left over in my cash envelopes, I decided to go ahead and let that food overage come out of that total and leave the rest in my checking account for my cushion. So technically, it didn't go as planned because I was over, but I was also over budget by so much in my food. You can see here in food, I was over by $332. And you might be saying, well, Miko, you're only showing an overage of $147.52 here. Well, if you go back to my expense trackers, I also went to Costco and spent $236. I just had a Costco sinking fund that was an inflow in my life to offset that expense. It's something that wasn't in my budget, and so I didn't include it in my budget amount, which is why I'm showing an overage for that. So it pretty much adds up there. Now, if we look at my fun and entertainment, I was over by $631. Well, that's because we spent money on that Palm Springs tournament for Chris. Health and beauty, I was over by $90. Miscellaneous, I was over by $276 because remember, I went and got some running clothes for $326, but I used some of the money, all of the money, well, not all, but some of the money that I got from Macari went towards running stuff and the rest went towards vacation savings. See, I can, even though it's showing red, doesn't mean I didn't have the money for it. It just wasn't planned in my budget. So therefore, in my mind, I'm over budget. I just had other options in my life on how I funded it. I was over in pets by 68, and then you always want to be over in savings. I was over $1,583 than what I normally save. So that's really, really good. So that's where I am with my January monthly budget category breakdown. Now, when you are filling this out, you might be saying, the whole point of doing this is one, figuring out where your money went. Were you over or under budget for what you set for yourself, the goals you set for yourself? Remember, your budget is a tool to make sure that we're throwing and spending our money in a way that leads us to success with our financial goals and ultimately the life we want to be living. So it's another way to check. Your income, your monthly inflow needs to match your spending. So you can see my monthly inflow was $14,810. My spending was $14,810. They match. I get so many questions when people try this process and they don't match for them and they're off and they get frustrated. If you're off by $50 and under, let it go, move on. If it's a big amount, this might be a reason why. You need to include your next month's starting balance in this process. Why? Because it's sitting in your checking account ready to be spent in the next tracking period. For instance, I have $5,384 sitting in my checking account right now, the day I closed out my budget and the day I'm starting my new tracking period for February. Your starting balance is the amount you have in your checking account in your life the moment you close out your budget or you're starting your new tracking period. So for me today, that's $5,384. So if you take my monthly spending, which is $9,426, and you add what's sitting in my checking account, that equals the $14,810. Now, if we go over here to February and you look, I don't think I've set up my tracking. I haven't, my expense trackers yet. But so over here on my checking account expense tracker, guess what I'm going to put for my starting balance right here? It's going to be my ending balance for January, this 5,384. The ending balance for January, 5,384, is going to be my starting balance for February, the next coming month, which I need to fill this out and get that done. So I am ready to go to the bank. I have my teller slips. I also made changes to my February budget that you can see on my calendar here. Like I had to increase my YouTube TV to 103, my house insurance increased to 366, my car insurance increased to 184. This is by month, and my Netflix increased to $25 a month. So YouTube TV and Netflix, these streaming services, as well as insurance, is increasing, which is why I had to make those adjustments. So also you can see, Because my Chewy, we talked about this, my Chewy came out in January and it was for $69.78. Now, before I changed it, this was like $265. So this really freed up about $181 in my budget by making these changes to my fixed expenses. And so I decided I'm going to pull that cash out for my savings challenges for February. That's how I'm going to be funding some of my savings challenges. I usually don't have my savings challenges in my budget. I try to really challenge myself to save from my cash envelopes, from my spending money, but it just worked out because I had to make those changes to my fixed expenses. I had some money left over, and that's what I'm deciding to do with it. So, closed out my budget for January. That chapter is now done. So guess what's going to happen? Well, after I go to the bank today, I need to make all of these different savings transfers to all these pink ones. I have to save $100 in cash for my hay purchase. I need to stuff my cash envelopes for the cash I pull out for my cash envelopes, my variable spending here in my budget. But once all of that is done, guess what? I'm going to be going to the beginning of my workbook, and you'll be seeing this probably tomorrow. Or today's Friday, so on Monday, I'm going to be filling up my first column for my yearly spending overview. I'm also getting updated with my savings trackers because I'm contributing to savings. So I'm going to get these updated and highlighted as well. So that's one of the things that you'll see me have completed on Monday, and that is my Monday morning routine.